All right, so next up we've got two speakers with us. We got Terrance DeJesus and Justin Ibarra. Terrance is a security detection engineer for Elastic, where he balances engineering development with threat research, and Justin is the leader of the threat research and detection engineering team at Elastic. In this talk, they'll speak about SWAT, the Simple Workspace ATT&CK Tool, which is a cybersecurity application grounded in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. SWAT's written in Python, and it's instrumental in emulating red teaming behavior specifically against Google Workspace and acting as a post-compromise tool. So please give a warm welcome to Terrance and Justin.
Hello, everybody. If you see my face throughout the talk and it's very stern, it's me trying to control my excitement inside and my nervousness as well. So yeah, just a heads up. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We got a lot of demoing. Hopefully we'll try not to kill you with slides. But yeah, so let's introduce SWAT. It's a simple Google Workspace ATT&CK tool, acronym, very easy to understand, and it went very well. So we'll kind of just breeze through this again. Who am I? I'm Terrance DeJesus, threat research and detection engineer at Elastic, focusing on detection rules for a lot of different cloud integrations, AWS, Google Workspace, GCP, things like that. And then yeah, I do a lot of engineering for research development as well, so a lot of CI/CD things, back-end engineering as well.
Yep, and as you heard, my name's Justin. I do lead that threat research and detection engineering team at Elastic. Primarily focused around endpoint, cloud, web, but all kinds of threat research and other detection engineering enablement. We spend a lot of time building prevention capabilities, SIM, EDR, all kinds of other things at scale. And yeah, this is awesome seeing how packed this room is, so we're excited.
Yeah, you'll see us pass the mic quite often here, so this is not scripted at all. It's only one mic. So yeah, hope everybody's a SpongeBob fan, but it's probably one of my favorite episodes there. So moving on to the agenda, we'll talk a little bit about the background and inspiration. And sorry, I'll try to move out of the way for you guys as well. We'll talk about background and inspiration. We'll do like an introduction to SWAT. What was the core design of SWAT and kind of why did we go that route. We'll also do some commands. We'll demo some commands as well. We'll talk about authentication and authorization inside of SWAT, which we're still figuring out to this day. And then we'll do emulations. We'll do a couple of emulation demos as well for what we have. We'll talk about roadmap, and then we'll try to leave some time at the end for FAQ. If anybody has any questions, yeah, feel free to lobby them at us. So yeah, background and inspiration. The simplest way to put it is automate all the things, right? So being a threat detection engineer, is anybody a detection engineer? Awesome. So yeah, you're probably familiar with the whole process of ingesting logs, getting logs into whatever your platform is, and trying to emulate some type of activity that seems benign or malicious, and then trying to write some really, really good detection rules or high efficacy rules on that data. So if you're familiar with Google Workspace, everything with Google Workspace is really API driven. There's an API for Drive, there's an API for Docs, there's an API for Token, for SAML, for a lot of different things. So ultimately, when I was tasked with doing a lot of the threat detection rule development for Google Workspace, a lot of it was UI madness. A lot of clickiness, a lot of going through multiple pages, a lot of nested folders inside of there. It was just a mess. So yeah, we really wanted to create something that was repeatable, something to where we didn't have to always set up a lab. We didn't have to mess with the different APIs and the different services. And ultimately, we could just set up a tool, we could run it, we could tell it to do something, it would do it again for us, we could tune a rule, or we could create another rule from maybe a new emulation. So yeah, we got a lot of inspiration from, there's a Okta threat emulation tool called Dorothy that was released by one of our colleagues, our former colleagues. Attack Range, of course, Atomic Red Team, Stratus Red Team. I'm sure everybody in here is fairly familiar with a lot of those emulation tools. And then secondly, or lastly, for us, Google Workspace is still kind of uncharted in terms of what's available, what can you abuse, what can you not abuse. Everybody uses either Outlook or Gmail. But yeah, so we kind of wanted to try something with Google Workspace and see if we could get some tool out there, because when I was looking, maybe there's something that exists now, but when I was looking, there was really no tool to help me automate a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to paint a bit more context too, there's a real emphasis on scale here. So like, I came from in-game, and we started building RTA over 5 years ago. And when you think about it, when you detection engineer at scale, right, we've got hundreds and hundreds of rules that we need to be able to test end to end, right? And so we'll talk about some of the design principles here in a sec, but essentially that's like a big undertone to this whole thing, right? Being able to emulate that at scale. And so RTA for us was endpoint, right? And we're starting to venture now more onto like service-based emulation and stuff. That's what Dorothy was, that's what this is. And so you'll tend to see a lot more of this stuff coming out as well in the future.
Yeah, so let's talk about SWAT kind of at a high level. I'll let Justin talk to a lot of it, and yeah.
Yeah, sorry, should have kept the mic. So obviously this is a demo tool talk, so we won't dive into any code, but we're gonna talk about the code and try to demo, and again, try not to just throw a bunch of slides at y'all. So like I said, there are a couple design principles. And when you just think through the name, right, Simple Workspace ATT&CK Tool, simple was very important for us, right? And a couple things around that. It needs to be programmatic, right? We need as little user interaction as possible. Obviously adding that is nice, nice interaction, nice look and feel. But we like to run this from CI/CD, right? We essentially do validation on the fly, and so that drives a lot of these decisions that we make. So I'll just jump through a couple of these components. The shell and CLI, it'll look familiar. It's just based on Python's CMD library. Part of the simpleness is we did this like dynamic importing, where essentially we expose two objects, the command object and the base emulation command object, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But the point here is it's not just for us to develop on. Like, we want this to be very community driven, open for y'all to use, for anyone to contribute to. So that went in a lot in the design in trying to simplify these things. So this abstract importing essentially exposes an interface in both of those classes, which allows, essentially the takeaway is it should be really easy to add emulations. You really don't even have to know much about the core of the code. Just set a few variables, set a few parameters, and you'll be good to go. And so, yeah, that's commands and emulations. Again, emulations are the ones actually generating the attack data commands or support commands, things like coverage and auditing and stuff like that. We have logging throughout. Obviously, whenever you do stuff like this, a lot of organizations like to know what's going on. Like, what did you just emulate in our environment? Auditing is nice because we kind of get that for free in Google Workspace. So we essentially just pull that remotely, and you can get step-by-step of what different users are doing. And then lastly, we put credential store up here because with Google Workspace, it gets a little convoluted passing around scopes, right, to authentication. Ironically enough, in an emulation tool, we're abiding by least principle, so we're being pretty safe with it rather than just ad hocly throwing all the privileges at it. And so it's a convenient object that goes around. It makes setting and getting credentials much easier. And of course, this whole thing is wrapped around attack, so a lot of niceties around that, a lot of categorization and coverage, and we'll talk about more about that in a sec.
Yeah, and one thing just to note on the credential store, again, you're dealing with Google Workspace, so we're dealing with OAuth, we're dealing with SAML, we're dealing with credentials from GCP, we're dealing with service accounts, right? So we wanted a way to where, again, we want you guys to interact and use the tool, but we also don't want you to feel like you're burdened with a lot of these authorization workflows and sessions and consent screens and things like that. So hopefully this will make it a lot more easier so you don't have to go through all of that. There's also the approach that when you're doing a lot of these emulations, you're going to be using multiple users within your Google Workspace ecosystem to interact with each other, interact with these services. So just having a credential store to where you could house all of these valid sessions and credentials and not have to load them again or go through the workflows, the authorization or authentication workflows, makes it a lot more, I guess I would say, easy to use the tool instead of having to reload it all again.
Yeah, so again, 2 more slides, we'll talk about this high level. This kind of talks about what I was saying about the abstraction of exposing these interfaces, essentially. So the takeaway here is it's really easy to create a command, right? So essentially, We do that via import lib. It will dynamically, abstractly just parse and load. And then as long as you define your execute method, and one thing that we don't talk about that's up here, we used argparse like integrated within to also make parameter parsing much more convenient. So again, another way to just simplify this. So, as you can see, like simplicity was like a huge theme for us. And so yeah, you define it in your execute method and it'll just know what to do. You don't have to like get into the implementation details. And so the nice thing is an emulation, right? This looks a bit more complicated, but essentially it's just an additional layer wrapping, right? And so again, we provide some niceties in the base emulation command. Things like enriching with attack data, parsing it out, parsing it from attack. So you don't have to statically define everything. And it does the same abstracted import module mechanism. And yeah, you define your execute. Really simple to do if you, again, you can look at the code and see how easy you can define with argparse, pointing to like the specific method you want it to call. Very nice, very clean. Yeah, it's very simple.
Yeah, so again, talking back to the simplicity, again, we didn't want to stand up here and say, you know, this is the next gen advanced tool, right? We focused on simplicity. We focused on it being very modular. When you guys play with it, you can, if you don't like the commands that are there, you can add a new command module and you can have it do whatever you want with Google Workspace. If you want to add a new emulation module, again, you can go ahead and drop a PI file and have it do what you want with those services and those APIs, and just have it automatically and magically kind of just work for you. So that was kind of the goal there. So yeah, definitely didn't want to hold you guys with all the slides. So we'll start a lot of the demonstration. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to demo and work in this terminal as well here, and I apologize for that. Sorry. All right, so yeah, I apologize for all of those that are huge PyCharm fans, and I'll try to increase this here as well. I started in VS Code, and that's what I use. Justin loves PyCharm. He's trying to get me to switch over every day. So yeah, so here's SWAT. As you can see, again, it's just a stateful shell. Looking at SWAT, and the reason I pulled this up so that way we could see the files is that if you look at it, you have commands and you have emulations. So all of our command modules are just PI files that are dropped in there, and it will dynamically load them and import them. Same things with the emulations. So with the emulations, again, it's wrapped around MITRE ATT&CK. So we have like a lot of the tactics up there, and then you just drop in what emulation you're trying to do. And as long as you add the specific emulation class and execute method, you're free to do whatever you want with Google Workspace. So yeah, we'll take a look at some of the commands here as well. I'll try to, I feel like it's very, is that better for people? Probably. Yeah. Perfect, okay, sorry. So yeah, doing help. As you can see here, we already have some commands: audit, clear, creds. Audit, what we do is we pull the data from Google Workspace from the admin reports API, which allows you to pull all of the logs. Every single API in Google Workspace has its own kind of logging bucket, I guess you could say, doc, drives, etc. So we pull the logs into data frames, and that allows us to kind of splice and dice it and look at that data there. Obviously clear, because you need that in any type of shell tool. Creds. So creds is where we actually store a lot of the credentials. We'll try to show that here shortly. Just run a little bit behind on time. Authorization, again, we store the credentials. Authorization will take those credentials. It'll interact with Google Workspace, and it'll give us an authenticated or authorized session. Coverage, again, this is just to show what emulations do we have and what parts of the MITRE ATT&CK matrix does it cover. And then obviously the emulate command is how you actually emulate a lot of those emulations. So a lot of emulate going on here. All right, so we'll show a little bit here. Just to save on time, I'll kind of show you guys kind of the creds that we have right now. And again, these credentials, you're pulling them from GCP. That's where you get your credentials for your OAuth or your service accounts. So as you can kind of see here, we have stored credentials for Whiskers, and then we have some stored credentials for default as well. So we can take those credentials, we can transform them, we can refresh our sessions or get new access tokens, making SWAT kind of very simple. We don't have to go through all that workflow again. Just to show auth. So with auth, as you can see, we do have some stored auth sessions. Again, these are live sessions. That mean we had the credentials, we did the consent screen, we took the authorization code, we got an access token, and now we're good to go. So we can use Whiskers. Whiskers is actually an external Google Workspace account, and default is actually kind of our victim, I guess you could say, or target account. So that way, what this allows us to do is when you run emulations and you have credentials stored or authorized sessions stored, you can actually tell the emulation what session you want to use for what user based on the keys that are stored in the credential store. So moving over, again, coverage, it's very simple. I'll just kind of show you guys here quickly. And it probably looks really sloppy because I'm zoomed in quite a bit here. So yeah, it's just showing us exactly what emulations we have, what tactics and techniques we have, and how you would run that emulation, and a little bit about the description. And then every single command actually has its own kind of helper for it. So like you can see for this one, it's going to be a little hard, but I'll explain it. So you have your name of the emulation, your emulation command, your description, the services that it's going to be using, like Drive, Forms, Gmail, all of the APIs that it's going to be using. You then have your scopes, and then you then have your techniques as well. So as you can see, Google Workspace is really heavy on scopes, OAuth and authn, and then as well as what different API that you're going to be hitting. Do we have time for an emulation?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. Perfect. You guys still with me? Yep. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll just run an emulation here. I may have one stored just to keep it simple, and I totally don't. So if Justin wants to entertain you real quick, I'll get that command going.
Yeah, and he didn't even mention the beautiful Google-based colors. It's a nice touch.
Totally forgot. Gotta have colors.
And while he's typing that, one thing you'll notice too is we actually have a bunch more emulations prepped, ready to go. But we focused on building out the more complex ones. So like a lot of these more trivial ones, easy to get coverage on, so we spent other time refactoring some other things, which if we have time we can talk about. But this is the best part, so.
Bear with me here.
The anticipation should be building. Next time we'll copy and paste.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
It's a more authentic demo this way, though.
So we'll let that run here. So I will zoom that in here, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of what we just did. There we go. Yeah, so we called the emulate command, which again, it has base command in it. It then calls the emulation Gmail phishing form link, which is one of the emulations that we have available. What we're doing is we're telling it to use Whiskers valid authorization and authentication session, which again is a different Google Workspace account. It's just a regular user account. It's separate from the DeJesusarchaeology.com domain. So again, it's an outsider. So what we did is we just told it what it will actually do is it will use two of the APIs. It will use Gmail and it will use Forms. It will dynamically create a Google Forms telling like, hey, you're a winner. Congratulations, everybody's a winner here. And then it will take that form, it will store it in Whiskers Google Drive. It will create a shareable link, and then it will send that via Gmail to the Terrance at DeJesus.archaeology. So it will then send that, I'll get an email, and it will tell me to click that link. Again, the whole purpose of this is to just do the emulation so that way we can generate that data for the rule detection development. So it looks like it did that, and I'll actually show you guys here. So here's Whiskers. Don't mind his That's when he got arrested once. But he's a very, very bad cat. So that's a separate account. Now, if you look at my emails, you'll actually see, oh, hey, somebody whose name is not a hacker reversed. So congratulations on winning the giveaway. And he actually sent me a link. He's a very nice cat. Very nice cat. So yeah, I won a giveaway. So if I were to click on that, I would have a winning giveaway form. And then, as we work on emulations like this, we plan on adding things like, of course, stealing social security numbers and credentials and things like that. But this is just for demo purposes. So again, it staged that in his own domain, sent it to ours, and now I've been phished, essentially. How much time, Justin?
2.
2, okay.
3, maybe 3.
3, okay. Cool. So one thing I wanted to show you guys was just the audit command. So again, audit will pull logs. So what we can actually see is, if I can type here. So I'm going to audit, I'm going to tell it to pull the token data from Google Workspace for the last 15 minutes, and it's probably going to look really horrible. So I'll put it in interactive, and that will help me kind of look at that data better. So it'll tell me what columns are available. I'll look at, name, and then it'll kind of tell me, so I'll pick a row, and it probably looks bad. And it will actually pull that data from Google Workspace. So there's a little bit of like forensics I guess you could do here with the Google Workspace logs, but it's all available via SWAT. So that way, as you're doing the emulations, you can pull the data and you can look at it as well. We'll try to move fast here. If you want to talk about that, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, obviously, this emulation is a means to an end for us in the grander scheme of our detection engineering. I just threw an example roll up here. That's equal, one of our languages. I also threw a link down here for some existing Google Workspace rules we have. Again, the point here, like Terrance just alluded to, is it's the generation of the data, right? And so for us, this goes through the stack, goes through our integration, it's normalized, ingested, and it's exposed to our detection engine where we can write these rules. And so, yeah, this is essentially what's driving all of this. For the roadmap, we're very open by design, us individually and also the work we work on. And so, again, we built this primarily to make it friendly for community contribution and interaction. So more of that, more from us. Expanding, we've already got some refactor PRs in. Again, this started from a Hack Week project internally for us, and it was kind of cool, so we kept doing it. Tango and app scripts is going to be some awesome persistent stuff we're working on. And then, yeah, expanding more with Google Workspace services. No time for questions. We just open sourced this right before coming up here, so if you go there, it's there now. Follow us on Twitter if you want to chat. We love collaborating. So thanks, y'all.
Absolutely.
Great talking.
Thanks.